Your work belongs to Ravencourt, and Ravencourt belongs to me." With those words, Duke Nathaniel Harrow seized his wife's research journals and handed them to Lady Clarissa Beaumont before the Royal Agricultural Council. Duchess Helena Harrow remained standing beside the long walnut table, though every nobleman in the chamber had turned to watch her humiliation. Behind them, rain struck the tall windows of Somerset House, and beneath the vaulted ceiling, 6 glass lamps illuminated the evidence of 3 years of her life: dried wheat specimens, botanical drawings, soil records, and the pale green stalk that had survived exposure to the ashen blight. Every item bore Clarissa's newly printed initials. Helena looked at her husband. "Tell them whose hands planted that specimen." Nathaniel's expression did not change. He wore the black coat she had chosen for him that morning, its silver buttons engraved with the Harrow crest. Only the tightening of his fingers around her journals revealed that he understood exactly what she was asking. "Lady Clarissa directed the work," he said. "You assisted her during a difficult period of grief." A murmur traveled through the council chamber. Clarissa lowered her lashes with carefully rehearsed sorrow. At 26, she possessed the kind of delicate beauty society mistook for innocence. Pale gold hair, translucent skin, and eyes that seemed perpetually close to tears. She placed one gloved hand over Helena's journals, as though protecting them. "Helena," Clarissa said softly, "please do not make this more painful than it must be." Helena felt something inside her become very still. For 3 years, she had risen before dawn to work in the abandoned glass house at Ravencourt. She had crossbred hundreds of wheat varieties, tested diseased soil, and recorded every failure, while Nathaniel dismissed the project as a respectable distraction for a childless duchess. When the ashen blight spread from the northern counties and began blackening Ravencourt's fields, he had finally entered her laboratory. He had held the first resistant stalk beneath the sunlight and called her brilliant. That had been 11 days ago. Now Sir Edmund Vale, chairman of the council, cleared his throat. "Your Grace, these journals contain technical observations written in several hands. Lady Clarissa claims the principal experiments are hers. Does the Duchess dispute that claim?" "I do." Nathaniel turned toward Helena. The warning in his eyes was unmistakable. She ignored it. "Ask Lady Clarissa why the resistant seedlings must be watered before sunrise," Helena said. "Ask her why copper vessels cannot be used during germination. Or ask her to explain the figures on page 117. Clarissa's fingers tightened upon the top journal. Nathaniel stepped between them. "My wife has not recovered from the death of her father. Her attachment to this project has become unhealthy." The cruelty of it struck Helena more sharply than the theft. Her father had taught her to recognize plants before she could properly read. After his death, Nathaniel had found her crying in the glasshouse and promised that no one would ever use her grief against her. Now he had transformed it into proof of madness. Sir Edmund glanced uncomfortably at the other council members. "Perhaps an independent examination." "There is no time," Nathaniel interrupted. "The blight has reached 3 additional counties. Lady Clarissa's treatment must be approved today." Helena stared at him. "The treatment is unfinished." Clarissa gave a quiet gasp. "If it is planted in contaminated soil before the roots are stabilized, it will fail," Helena continued. "Worse, it may carry the disease into the next generation of seed." Nathaniel's jaw hardened. "Enough. No, you cannot distribute it simply because Lord Beaumont promised you a position in the royal cabinet." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, Clarissa's gentle expression cracked. Nathaniel crossed the space between them. His voice dropped so that only Helena could hear. "You will leave this room now, or I will have a physician declare you unfit to manage your own affairs." Helena searched the face of the man she had married 8 years earlier. Once, Nathaniel had admired that she understood estate accounts better than his stewards. He had asked for her judgment and listened when she spoke. But years without an heir, mounting debts, and his hunger for political influence had slowly turned admiration into resentment. He did not merely believe Clarissa. He had chosen her lie because it offered him something Helena would not: power purchased with stolen work. Helena removed the small iron key from the chain at her waist and placed it on the table. "The lower drawer in my laboratory contains the final soil records," she said. "If you intend to steal my work, Nathaniel, you should at least understand what you are risking." He picked up the key. "The laboratory is no longer yours." 2 council guards escorted Helena from the chamber. By the time she returned to Ravencourt that evening, the consequences had already begun. Her nameplate had been removed from the glasshouse door. 2 footmen carried crates of her equipment toward a waiting carriage, while Clarissa's newly appointed overseer directed them. Helena hurried forward. "Where are you taking those?" The overseer unfolded a document bearing Nathaniel's signature. "All botanical materials now belong to the Beaumont Agricultural Trust. Inside the glass house, her 4 assistants stood in a line. The youngest, Thomas Reed, had tears in his eyes. "You are all dismissed," the overseer announced. "Leave the estate before sunset." Helena turned toward the shelves. Her seed boxes were gone. So were the resistant plants she had kept beneath locked glass covers. Only her microscope remained on the central bench. As she lifted its case, something rattled inside. Helena opened it and found a dead beetle pinned to the velvet lining. Its body was the length of her thumbnail, with narrow black legs and wings coated in a fine silver powder. She had seen drawings of the species in a Dutch botanical volume, but never a living specimen. It came from the eastern Mediterranean and could not have survived an English winter. Someone had deliberately placed it among her instruments. Using a pair of forceps, Helena turned the insect beneath the lamp. A gray substance clung to its mouthparts, the same color as the fungus consuming Ravencourt's wheat. The blight had not arrived naturally. A commotion rose beyond the glass house. Dozens of tenants were gathering at the estate gates, their clothes damp from the rain and their faces hollow with fear. Nathaniel climbed onto the stone steps to address them, Clarissa standing at his side. "The Beaumont treatment will be distributed within 10 days, he declared. "Ravencourt's harvest will be saved." The tenants cheered, because desperation gave them no choice. Helena looked across the fields stretching behind them. Their wheat heads drooped beneath the rain, streaked with the familiar ash-gray rot. Those families had nearly exhausted their winter stores. If the promised treatment failed, they would lose both the current crop and the seed reserved for spring. Helena returned her attention to the beetle. Beneath its left wing, almost hidden by the silver powder, someone had burned a tiny shipping mark into its shell. She recognized it immediately. The mark belonged to Lucien Voss, the foreign seed merchant she had dismissed 6 months earlier, after discovering contaminated grain in his warehouse. Nathaniel had accused her of overreacting and quietly restored Voss's trading license. A shadow moved behind the glasshouse door. Helena spun around, but saw only a man's coat disappearing beyond the hedges. Then the sharp scent of lamp oil reached her. At her feet, a golden stream crept beneath the laboratory door. Someone outside struck a match. The match struck against stone. Helena kicked the laboratory door open before the flame could touch the oil. The man outside recoiled, one hand shielding his face. He wore the brown coat of a Ravencourt laborer, but Helena did not recognize him. She seized his wrist. "Who sent you?" He twisted free and shoved her backward. Helena struck the edge of the workbench, pain shooting through her shoulder. The man dropped the burning match and ran toward the orchard. Flame raced across the oil-soaked threshold. Helena snatched a wool blanket from the instrument cabinet and threw it over the fire. She stamped on the cloth until smoke filled the glasshouse, and the last orange tongue disappeared beneath her boots. "Your Grace!" Thomas Reed rushed through the doorway, carrying a bucket of rainwater. 2 other dismissed assistants followed him. "The man went toward the eastern gate," Helena said. "Do not chase him, he may not be alone." Thomas emptied the water across the threshold. "I saw him speaking with Mr. Voss's driver yesterday." Helena turned sharply. "Lucien Voss is at Ravencourt? He arrived 3 nights ago. His wagons are being kept behind the old granary." The old granary stood beyond the tenants' cottages, far from the main road. Nothing stored there would appear in the estate's ordinary delivery records. Helena wrapped the beetle in a square of clean linen and slipped it into her reticule. "Did any of you help Lady Clarissa prepare the formula she intends to distribute?" The assistants exchanged uneasy looks. Thomas answered, "She ordered us to combine your treatment with a preservative supplied by Mr. Voss. We refused." "What preservative?" "A gray powder packed in blue barrels. He called it mineral ash." Helena's stomach tightened. The silver residue on the beetle had not been mineral ash. It was a fungal carrier, designed to cling to insects and seeds. If the same substance had been mixed into her unfinished treatment, Clarissa was not merely stealing the cure, she was preparing to spread the blight. Hoofbeats sounded beyond the hedges. Nathaniel rode into view with 2 estate guards behind him. Clarissa sat in a small carriage several yards away, protected from the rain beneath a cream-colored parasol. Nathaniel dismounted and looked from the scorched threshold to the soaked blanket at Helena's feet. What happened? Someone attempted to burn the laboratory. Clarissa stepped down from the carriage. Or Helena staged a fire after learning the laboratory was no longer hers. Thomas moved forward. "I saw the attacker, Your Grace." Nathaniel's gaze shifted to the young assistant. "You were dismissed from this estate, and nearly murdered before I could leave." Clarissa gave Nathaniel a wounded glance. "This is precisely what I warned you about. She is turning the servants against us." Helena expected hesitation from her husband. Instead, he looked directly at the oil glistening beneath the door and chose to ignore it. "Search them," he ordered the guards. One guard took Helena's reticule before she could resist. He removed the linen bundle and opened it. Clarissa's face went pale when she saw the beetle. The reaction lasted only an instant, but Helena caught it. Nathaniel held the insect beneath the light. "What is this?" "Evidence," Helena replied. "A foreign beetle carrying the same fungus found in our wheat. It bears Lucian Voss's shipping mark." Nathaniel's expression hardened. "Mr. Voss is an authorized merchant. Because you restored the license I revoked. I corrected an abuse of your authority. He sold contaminated seed. You never proved that." Helena stepped closer. "Ask him why his wagons are hidden behind the old granary." For the first time, Nathaniel looked uncertain. Clarissa touched his sleeve. "Voss delivered materials for tomorrow's demonstration. The council requested discretion to prevent theft." "Tomorrow?" Helena asked. "You told the tenants the treatment would be distributed in 10 days. The council advanced the schedule," Nathaniel said. "You cannot test it tomorrow. The treated seedlings require 72 hours before any reaction becomes visible." Clarissa smiled faintly. "Mine require 12. Helena understood then. Clarissa intended to produce a dramatic but temporary recovery before the council. The wheat might appear healthier for several hours while the altered fungus entered the roots. By the time the plants collapsed, Parliament would already have approved the formula for national distribution. Nathaniel handed the beetle to a guard. "Give this to Mr. Voss for identification." "No." Helena reached for it, but the second guard blocked her. "You are placing evidence into the hands of the man it implicates. You have made enough reckless accusations, and you have chosen not to examine any of them." His eyes flashed with anger. "You will remain inside the West Wing until the demonstration is complete." Helena stared at him. "You are confining me?" "I am protecting the work from interference." Clarissa stood beside him, wearing an expression of quiet victory. The guards escorted Helena toward Ravencourt Hall, while Nathaniel ordered the assistants removed from the estate. At the west entrance, Helena looked back and saw Clarissa speaking privately to the guard who carried the beetle. By the time the doors closed behind her, the evidence would already be gone. Helena was locked inside her former morning room. The windows overlooked the eastern fields, where laborers were erecting a white pavilion for the council's demonstration. Beneath it stood 6 wooden planting beds, filled with infected soil. A maid brought dinner shortly after dark. She set down the tray without meeting Helena's eyes. "Wait," Helena said. "What is your name?" "Mary Cole, your grace." Helena recognized the surname. "Your father farms the southern tenancy." Mary nodded. "His wheat turned gray this morning." "Then listen carefully. Tomorrow, do not allow him near the demonstration beds. Take your family beyond the river if you can." The maid's hands began to tremble. "Is the treatment dangerous?" "I believe it is designed to spread the disease." Mary looked toward the locked door, then reached beneath her apron. "Mr. Reed told me to give you this." She placed a small brass key in Helena's palm. "The old granary," Mary whispered. "He said you must go before midnight. Mr. Voss is moving the barrels at dawn." Helena waited until the corridor fell silent. The morning room had no second door, but she had redesigned the West Wing's ventilation system years earlier, after damp ruined the wall coverings. Behind a tall bookcase was a narrow maintenance passage leading to the servants' staircase. At 11:30, she slipped out of the house wearing Mary's dark cloak. Rain concealed her as she crossed the orchard. The old granary appeared ahead, its lower windows covered with boards. No guard stood outside. The brass key opened the side door. Inside, moonlight fell across rows of blue barrels. Each bore a customs seal from Trieste, and the initials LV Helena. Pried open the nearest lid. Silver powder covered the seeds within. Then she noticed a ledger lying on a crate. Its pages recorded shipments to 12 estates already infected by the ashen blight. Beside every delivery appeared Nathaniel's authorization number. Footsteps sounded outside. Helena closed the ledger and moved behind the barrels as the door opened. Clarissa entered, carrying a lantern. Lucian Voss followed her. "You promised the Duchess would be blamed before the council arrived," Voss said. Clarissa removed her gloves. "She will be," she replied. "Tomorrow morning, Nathaniel will discover the contaminated seeds hidden beneath his wife's bed." Helena remained motionless behind the barrels, one hand pressed over her mouth. Clarissa set the lantern on the crate, directly beside the shipping ledger. "The contaminated seeds alone will not be enough," Voss said. "The Duchess will claim they were planted in her room. Of course she will. That is why Nathaniel must discover something else." Clarissa reached into her cloak and withdrew a bundle of letters tied with black ribbon. She laid them beside the lantern. Helena recognized the handwriting immediately. It was hers. "These prove that Helena purchased the foreign beetles," Clarissa said. "They also show that she intended to create the blight, present herself as England's savior, and embarrass her husband before the government. Voss examined the first letter. The signature is convincing. It should be. I practiced it for 6 months. Helena's fingernails dug into her palm. Clarissa's scheme had begun long before the disease appeared at Ravencourt, and Nathaniel had given her the access she needed. After Helena's father died, Clarissa had offered to organize the Duchess's correspondence. Nathaniel had insisted Helena accept the help, calling it an act of kindness. He had placed Clarissa inside Helena's private study. He had allowed her to learn every curve of Helena's handwriting. And after the demonstration? Voss asked. Parliament approves the treatment. My father's trust receives the national contract. Nathaniel receives his cabinet position, and your merchants acquire the surviving estates when their owners cannot repay their loans. The treatment will not save the crops. It need only appear to work until the contracts are signed. Voss smiled. And the Duke still believes you intend to become his wife? Clarissa's face cooled. Nathaniel believes whatever flatters his pride. A floorboard creaked beneath Helena's shoe. Voss turned toward the barrels. Who is there? Helena seized the ledger and ran. Voss lunged across the narrow aisle, catching the edge of her cloak. The fabric tightened around her throat. Helena released the clasp and slipped free, leaving the cloak in his hands. Clarissa raised the lantern. Helena? Helena reached the side door, but Voss slammed it shut before she could escape. He stood between her and the exit, while Clarissa approached from behind. You should have remained locked in your room, Clarissa said. You should have learned enough botany to understand the work you stole. Clarissa's expression sharpened. Give me the ledger. Helena held it against her chest. Nathaniel will learn what you are. From you? Clarissa laughed softly. By sunrise, he will believe you created the disease that is destroying his estate. He will see these records. He has already chosen not to see. The words struck because they were true. Nathaniel had ignored the oil beneath the laboratory door. He had dismissed the shipping mark, silenced Helena before the council, and surrendered the beetle to the very merchant it implicated. Clarissa had manipulated him, but she had not forced any of those decisions. Voss advanced. Enough. Take the book. Helena glanced toward the barrels stacked behind Clarissa. The granary's roof leaked near the western wall, and rainwater had formed a shallow channel across the stone floor. The nearest blue barrel stood with its lid loosened. Helena kicked it over. Silver-coated seeds spilled into the water. Clarissa screamed and jumped backward. Voss instinctively turned to protect her from the powder. Helena drove her shoulder into him and reached the door. His hand caught her hair. She twisted, seized the lantern from the crate, and hurled it against the far wall. Glass shattered. Flame climbed a pile of empty sacks. Voss released her. You fool, he shouted. The entire building will burn. Helena pulled the door open and ran into the rain with the ledger. Behind her, Clarissa called for help. Bells began ringing at the hall as orange lights spread across the granary windows. Helena crossed the orchard, her wet dress dragging around her ankles, but voices soon rose ahead. Estate guards were moving toward the fire. She could not return through the west wing. Clarissa would expect her to use the maintenance passage, and the contaminated seeds might already be beneath her bed. Helena turned toward the tenants' cottages. Thomas opened the door of a small stone house before she knocked. Mary stood behind him with Helena's cloak folded over one arm. We saw the flames, Thomas said. Voss and Clarissa were inside the granary. Helena placed the ledger on the kitchen table. This contains records of every infected estate and the authorization numbers used for each shipment. Thomas turned the pages while Mary brought a lamp closer. These numbers belong to the Duke, he said. They were issued through Nathaniel's office. That does not prove he knew what the shipments contained, but it proves his authority enabled them. Helena found the entry for Ravencourt. 3 deliveries had arrived over 6 months. The first contained foreign insects. The second contained contaminated grain. The third contained the blue barrels intended for the false cure. Beside the final entry appeared a note in Voss's hand. Secondary reserve delivered to B. Chapel. Release after parliamentary approval. B. Chapel, Mary said. Could that mean Beaumont Chapel? Thomas shook his head. There is no chapel on Lord Beaumont's estate. Helena studied the letters again. Blackthorn Chapel. The abandoned chapel stood 10 miles north of Ravencourt, surrounded by fields owned by Clarissa's father. If a secondary reserve was stored there, destroying the granary would not stop the plot. A pounding shook the cottage door. Open in the Duke's name! Mary went pale. Thomas closed the ledger and pushed it toward Helena. The cellar. No. If they search the house, all 3 of us will be arrested. Helena tore out the page listing the Blackthorn Reserve and handed the ledger to Thomas. Hide this somewhere the Duke's men cannot find it. Then take Mary across the river. What will you do? Helena looked at the door. I will make Nathaniel explain his accusation in front of witnesses. She opened it, Nathaniel stood outside with 6 guards. Rain ran from his dark hair onto the collar of his coat. Behind him, Clarissa waited in a carriage, wrapped in a blanket. Soot marked one side of her face, making her appear injured and vulnerable. Voss was nowhere in sight. Nathaniel's gaze fell upon Helena's wet, smoke-stained dress. "You escaped confinement," he said. "You entered the granary and attempted to destroy Lady Clarissa's treatment. I found records proving that Voss brought the blight to Ravencourt. Where are they?" Clarissa leaned from the carriage. "She took nothing. I saw her set the fire after we discovered her inside." Helena met Nathaniel's eyes. "Search Voss. He was burned while trying to extinguish the flames. A physician is treating him. How fortunate that he cannot be questioned." Nathaniel stepped closer. His face held anger. But beneath it, Helena recognized something more dangerous: fear. If she was right, his political future was over. His authorization numbers connected him to contaminated shipments across England. Believing Clarissa was not merely easier, it was his only path to preserving himself. A guard approached, carrying a wooden box. "We searched the Duchess's chamber, Your Grace." He opened it. Inside lay dozens of silver-coated seeds, 3 dead foreign beetles, and the forged letters tied with black ribbon. Mary gasped. Nathaniel lifted the first letter and read it beneath the carriage lamp. Helena watched his face change as he reached the final lines. "According to this," he said, "you ordered Voss to release the insects 6 months ago. The letters are forged. They bear your signature. So did the journals you gave to Clarissa." For one moment, Nathaniel said nothing. Helena stepped toward him. "You know how long she controlled my correspondence. You gave her access. Have the ink examined. Question the servants. Compare the paper with the stationery in her rooms." Clarissa began to cry. "Nathaniel, she tried to kill me." Helena did not look away from her husband. "This is the moment you decide whether you want the truth or merely a culprit." The tenants had emerged from their cottages. Nearly 50 people now stood in the rain, watching their Duke and Duchess beneath the wavering lamps. Nathaniel looked at the forged letters, then at Clarissa's tears. Finally, he turned to the guards. "Take the Duchess into custody." The words silenced the entire village. Helena felt the last remaining hope in her marriage break cleanly inside her. "On what charge?" she asked. Nathaniel folded the letter. "Sabotage, arson, and conspiracy to destroy the harvest." As the guards seized her arms, a horse came racing down the northern road. Its rider wore the red coat of a royal courier. He pulled the animal to a halt before Nathaniel and extended a sealed document. "By order of the Crown," the courier announced, "the Ravencourt demonstration has been moved to Parliament. The Duke, the Duchess, and Lady Clarissa will present the cure before the King's Commissioners tomorrow at noon." Nathaniel broke the seal. The courier's next words drained the color from Clarissa's face. "Every claimant must bring their original research journals and submit to questioning under oath." Clarissa recovered first. "The Duchess burned the original journals," she said. "You all saw the granary." Helena looked at her. "My journals were never inside it." Nathaniel dismissed the tenants and ordered Helena confined in the East Gatehouse under guard. He refused to send her to the county jail. Arresting a duchess before a royal inquiry would invite questions he was not ready to answer. As Helena was led away, she saw Thomas disappear behind the cottages, with Voss's ledger hidden beneath his coat. The gatehouse contained one narrow room and a barred window overlooking the road. Helena had barely sat down when Nathaniel entered alone. He placed the forged letters on the table. "Tell me where the original research journals are." "You gave them to Clarissa. She claims those are corrected copies. They contain observations in my handwriting, because she stole them from me." Nathaniel paced once across the room. "If you publicly challenge her tomorrow and fail, Parliament will cancel the treatment. Ravencourt will lose the cabinet contract. The creditors will seize our land, and hundreds of tenants will starve. And if you distribute her formula, thousands may starve. You have no proof. You surrendered my beetle to Voss, ignored the oil outside my laboratory, and arrested me after Clarissa planted evidence in my room. Every time proof appeared, you handed it back to the people destroying it." His face tightened. "I came here to offer you a way out." Helena almost laughed. "What must I surrender this time?" "Admit that grief confused your memory. Clarissa will tell the commissioners you assisted her. You will retain your title and receive an allowance. You want me to confess so your cabinet position survives. I want to save this estate. No, you want the estate to survive without admitting that I saved it first." Nathaniel stared at her, then collected the letters. "Tomorrow you will answer the commissioners under oath. So will Clarissa." A knock sounded. A guard entered and whispered to Nathaniel. "What happened?" Helena asked. Nathaniel hesitated. "The demonstration seedlings have begun to grow." "That is impossible." "They sprouted less than an hour after treatment." Helena stood. Her formula could accelerate damaged roots, but no wheat could germinate that quickly. Clarissa had substituted pre-sprouted seeds and concealed them beneath the soil. Nathaniel mistook Helena's alarm for defeat. "You see, her treatment works." "It is a stage trick." He left without answering. After midnight, Mary arrived carrying Helena's traveling dress and a covered meal tray. Beneath the bread lay a folded message from Thomas. "Voss's ledger is safe. The journal page you need was never in the laboratory. Remember your father's herbarium." Helena closed her eyes. After her father died, she had bound his favorite pressed plants into a memorial volume. To preserve the chronology of her experiments, she had placed duplicate pages from her research between the specimens, including the first successful resistance test and the formula proving the treatment required 72 hours. The herbarium was kept in the Royal Botanical Archive in London. It was independent evidence, dated and sealed months before Clarissa claimed the discovery. Helena wrote an authorization for Thomas to retrieve it and gave Mary the torn page mentioning Blackthorn Chapel. "Send someone you trust to the chapel," she said. "Do not enter. Record every wagon and every name." At dawn, Nathaniel's carriage took Helena, Clarissa, and the stolen journals to London. Armed guards sat between them. Clarissa avoided Helena's gaze throughout the journey. They reached Parliament shortly before noon. Royal commissioners, agricultural experts, and landowners crowded the hearing chamber. At the center stood 2 planting beds filled with infected soil. Clarissa's wheat appeared green and healthy. Sir Edmund Vale called the hearing to order. "Lady Clarissa Beaumont, do you swear that this treatment is entirely your work?" "I do." "And do you swear that these plants germinated today from untreated seed?" Clarissa glanced at Nathaniel. "I do." A commissioner cut open the first planting bed. Beneath the surface, its knife struck something solid. The attendants removed the soil and exposed a hidden wooden tray packed with mature roots. Whispers erupted across the chamber. Clarissa went white. Before Sir Edmund could question her, the rear doors opened. Thomas entered carrying Helena's herbarium, followed by 2 crown officers dragging Lucian Voss between them. One officer placed a blood-stained ledger on the commissioner's table. "We arrested this man at Blackthorn Chapel," he announced. "He was preparing enough contaminated seed to infect half the southern counties." Voss looked directly at Clarissa. Then he raised one chained hand and pointed, not at her, but at Nathaniel. The Duke authorized every shipment. Every face in the chamber turned toward Nathaniel. The Duke stared at Voss. "I authorized agricultural supplies, not contaminated seed." Voss smiled bitterly. "Your signature opened every port and silenced every inspector." Sir Edmund raised his hand. "The commissioners will examine the ledger. Until then, no one leaves." Crown officers locked the chamber doors. Helena opened her father's herbarium on the central table. Between pressed rosemary and winter lavender lay 3 research pages bearing the seal of the Royal Botanical Archive. "These were deposited 4 months ago," the archivist confirmed. "No page has been altered since." Helena showed the commissioners her original formula, the 72-hour stabilization requirement, and dated drawings of the resistant wheat. The handwriting matched the stolen journals, but not the forged letters found in her room. Clarissa interrupted. "She could have copied my work months ago." "Then explain the formula," Sir Edmund said. Clarissa froze. "Why must the roots be stabilized for 72 hours? I improved that stage." "With what compound?" Clarissa looked toward Voss. He laughed. "She cannot answer. She never understood the treatment." Nathaniel stepped forward. "You claimed Lady Clarissa directed the research. I repeated what she and Lord Beaumont told me. You swore it was true, and you wanted it to be true, Your Grace." The accusation landed harder than any denial. A commissioner examined the exposed roots beneath Clarissa's planting bed. "These plants are at least 12 days old. The demonstration was fraudulent." The green stalks were removed. Beneath them, the untreated wheat had already turned gray. Sir Edmund ordered Clarissa detained. She backed toward Nathaniel. "You promised to protect me." Nathaniel did not move. 2 officers seized her arms. Her frightened expression vanished, replaced by fury. "Ask your wife why she could not give you an heir," Clarissa shouted. "Ask what her precious experiments cost her." Helena went still. Nathaniel's face changed. "What are you talking about?" Clarissa smiled cruelly. "The tonic she drank after her second miscarriage came from my physician. Voss supplied the herbs." Helena gripped the table. For 6 years, she had blamed her own body. Clarissa had comforted her through every fever and brought the tonic Nathaniel insisted she drink. He had believed it would help her recover. Voss lowered his eyes. "What was in it?" Helena asked. He hesitated. "A preparation intended to prevent another pregnancy." Nathaniel crossed the chamber and struck Voss hard enough to knock him against the officers. "You poisoned my wife?" Sir Edmund ordered the Duke restrained. Helena felt no satisfaction. Nathaniel's rage came years too late. He had welcomed Clarissa into their home, defended her physician, and dismissed Helena's worsening illness as grief. Clarissa struggled against the officers. "He would have discarded you eventually. I merely hastened what he already believed, that a useless wife stood between him and greatness." Nathaniel looked at Helena. Horror replaced anger. She met his gaze without offering comfort. A messenger entered and handed Sir Edmund a report from Blackthorn Chapel. The officers had recovered enough contaminated grain to infect thousands of acres, but several wagons had already departed before the raid. "Where were they sent?" Helena asked. Sir Edmund unfolded the route sheet. "Ravencourt." Nathaniel turned pale. "The estate's spring seed is stored beside the river granary." Helena examined the delivery time. "The wagons will arrive before sunset." Sir Edmund ordered the officers to prepare horses, but Voss began laughing. "You are too late," he said. "The river granary has already been opened." Helena closed the herbarium. "Then stop questioning us, and take me home. If one contaminated seed enters the water, every farm downstream will carry the blight." The commissioners released Helena and Nathaniel under Crown escort. Clarissa and Voss remained in custody, while riders carried warnings to every village between London and Ravencourt. Helena's carriage reached the estate shortly before sunset. 3 wagons stood outside the river granary. Men were unloading blue barrels. "Stop!" Helena shouted before the carriage halted. The workers froze. Their overseer ran toward the river, but Thomas tackled him beside the bank. Crown officers surrounded the wagons. Helena opened one barrel. Silver-coated grain filled it to the rim. "None of this can be burned," she warned. "The smoke may carry the spores. Seal every barrel with wax and move them onto stone." Nathaniel ordered the granary evacuated. For the first time, he repeated Helena's instructions without challenging them. Then Mary emerged from the building, coughing. "One barrel broke inside," she said. Seeds fell through the floorboards. The granary stood directly above a drainage channel leading to the river. Helena rushed inside. Silver powder covered the floor, and water dripped through the broken roof. Several contaminated seeds were already floating toward the channel. "Close the river gate," she called. "The mechanism is jammed," a worker answered. Helena remembered warning Nathaniel months earlier that the gate needed repair. He had refused the expense while preparing for his political campaign. Now his decision threatened every farm downstream. Nathaniel removed his coat and climbed into the freezing channel. With Thomas beside him, he forced a wooden beam beneath the gate mechanism. "It will not hold!" Thomas shouted. Helena examined the rusted gears. "Break the upper chain. The gate will fall under its own weight. If it falls, Nathaniel may be trapped," Mary said. Helena looked at her husband. He understood the risk. "Do it," he said. A worker swung an axe. The chain snapped. Nathaniel pushed Thomas clear as the gate crashed down. Water exploded across the channel. For one terrible second, Nathaniel disappeared beneath it. Helena seized a rope and threw it toward the current. His hand surfaced and caught it. The workers dragged him onto the bank. The gate had sealed the contaminated water inside. Nathaniel lay coughing at Helena's feet. "Did we stop it?" "For now." Her answer offered no forgiveness, only fact. By nightfall, Crown officers had secured every barrel. Helena ordered the infected grain buried inside limestone pits, while her assistants collected soil samples. Then Thomas brought her a sealed envelope found inside the overseer's coat. It contained payment orders from Lord Beaumont, Clarissa's father, to Voss and several port officials. But the final document bore another name. Nathaniel read it and went still. The Beaumont Agricultural Trust had purchased Ravencourt's debts 6 weeks earlier. Under the contract Nathaniel had signed, any failure of the promised cure would transfer the entire estate to Lord Beaumont. Clarissa had never intended to marry him. She had intended to ruin him, take Ravencourt, and leave Helena blamed for the disaster. A church bell rang from the southern village. One of Helena's assistants rode toward them, his face white with fear. "The blight has appeared beyond the river," he said. "Not in the wheat." Helena felt the ground shift beneath her. "Where?" "In the village grain stores. The flour is already being baked into tomorrow's bread." Helena rode to the southern village with Thomas and the Crown officers. Nathaniel followed close behind. The bakery ovens were already lit. "Put out every fire," Helena shouted as she entered the square. "No one eats the bread." Villagers poured from their homes. Several protested until Mary opened a flour sack and showed them the gray threads spreading through it. Helena questioned the miller. "The grain arrived yesterday," he said. "The wagons carried the Duke's seal." Nathaniel looked stricken. Who signed the delivery receipt? My assistant, Jacob. But Jacob had disappeared. Thomas found his coat beside the millstream. In its pocket was a train ticket to Dover and a payment note bearing Lord Beaumont's initials. Helena ordered every sack sealed. The contaminated flour could not be burned or thrown into the river, so villagers carried it to the lined pits near the estate. By dawn, the immediate danger had passed. Nathaniel found Helena alone inside the empty bakery. Flour dust covered her dress, and exhaustion had darkened the skin beneath her eyes. I believed ambition made you obsessive, he said. Clarissa told me you cared more for your experiments than our marriage. Helena did not turn around. You watched me work to save your tenants and called it selfishness. I was angry, because I succeeded where you had failed. He lowered his head. I restored Voss's license because Lord Beaumont promised investment. I ignored your warnings because admitting you were right would have cost me that alliance. And our children? Nathaniel's voice broke. I did not know about the tonic. You knew I became ill whenever I drank it. You ordered me to continue because Clarissa's physician assured you it was necessary. He had no answer. Helena finally faced him. She poisoned me, but you taught her that my voice could be ignored. Nathaniel flinched. I will confess everything before Parliament, he said. The stolen research, the false accusation, Voss's license, and the shipments. That will destroy your career. It should. His remorse did not repair what he had done. But for the first time, he accepted a consequence without asking Helena to protect him from it. A crown officer entered carrying a telegram. Lord Beaumont has fled London, he announced. His carriage was seen traveling toward Ravencourt. Helena unfolded the message. Beaumont had withdrawn funds from the Agricultural Trust and taken the original contracts connecting him to the infected estates. He is coming here to destroy the records, Nathaniel said. Helena shook her head. The records are not his greatest danger. She remembered the map in Voss's ledger. Each infected estate surrounded a single uninfected property owned by the Beaumont Trust. When neighboring farms failed, the trust could purchase them cheaply and control the grain supply. But one document was still needed to prove that intention: the master acquisition list. Where would Clarissa keep something she never expected you to examine? Helena asked. Nathaniel's expression changed. The rooms I gave her at Ravencourt. They returned to the estate and searched Clarissa's chambers. Behind a false panel in her writing desk, Helena found contracts for 14 estates, forged copies of her letters, and a list of officials receiving bribes. At the bottom lay a marriage agreement. Clarissa was not promised to Nathaniel. She was contracted to marry Lucien Voss, after Ravencourt passed into Beaumont's control. Before Helena could gather the papers, smoke rose beyond the windows. Flames were climbing the west wing. A servant ran into the room. Lord Beaumont is inside the house, he cried. And he has locked the doors to the archive. Helena looked toward the burning corridor. The archive held the estate accounts, shipping authorizations, and the only surviving samples of her resistant wheat. Nathaniel seized the contracts from Clarissa's desk and thrust them into the servant's hands. Take these outside. Give them directly to the crown officers. Helena was already running toward the west wing. Smoke rolled across the ceiling, turning the corridor black. Servants formed a line from the courtyard well, passing buckets toward the flames. But the fire had reached the archive doors. Lord Beaumont had chained them from the outside and poured lamp oil across the floor. The seed cabinet is against the northern wall, Helena said. If the fire reaches it, we lose every resistant strain. Nathaniel caught her arm. You cannot go inside, she pulled free. Those seeds may be the only chance of restoring the harvest. A gunshot sounded behind the archive doors. Everyone fell silent. Lord Beaumont's voice came through the smoke. Send the Duchess in alone, or I burn the papers now. Helena took a wet cloth from Thomas and tied it over her mouth. Nathaniel blocked her path. He will kill you. He needs me to explain which records can convict him. And once you do, that depends on whether you finally trust my judgment. The words struck him. Slowly, Nathaniel stepped aside. Thomas cut the chain while the servants soaked the door. Helena entered. The archive was filled with smoke. Flames climbed the southern shelves, consuming estate accounts and shipping records. Lord Beaumont stood near the window with a pistol in one hand and an oil-soaked torch in the other. At his feet lay the locked seed cabinet. You have caused extraordinary inconvenience, he said. You poisoned farms to purchase them. I reorganized failing land. England's grain supply requires men capable of controlling it. You created the failure, and your husband authorized it. Helena glanced toward the desk. A leather portfolio rested beside the remaining account books. The master acquisition list, she said. Beaumont smiled. You understand its value. It proves the trust chose every estate before the blight appeared. It also proves Nathaniel signed the shipping permissions. If I fall, he falls with me. He has already agreed to confess. For the first time, Beaumont's confidence faltered. Helena moved closer to the seed cabinet. Stay where you are. You cannot leave through the corridor. The roof above it is collapsing. Beaumont looked toward the burning doorway. The northern window opens onto the conservatory roof, Helena continued. Give me the cabinet key, and I will show you the safe path. You expect me to believe you? No. I expect you to prefer trial over burning alive. A beam crashed behind him, sending sparks across the carpet. Beaumont stepped back, and Helena kicked the pistol from his hand. It fired into the ceiling. He struck her across the face with the torch handle. Helena fell beside the cabinet. Beaumont reached for the weapon, but Nathaniel burst through the smoke and tackled him. The two men crashed against the desk. Take the portfolio, Nathaniel shouted. Helena seized it and crawled toward the northern window. Beaumont threw Nathaniel aside and grabbed her ankle. You will not take my estates. Helena kicked him in the face. Thomas and two crown officers entered, dragging Beaumont away as part of the ceiling collapsed between them. Nathaniel lifted the seed cabinet while Helena carried the portfolio. They escaped through the northern window seconds before the archive roof fell. In the courtyard, Helena opened the cabinet. 12 packets remained intact, enough to continue her work, but not enough to replant Ravencourt. Inside Beaumont's portfolio, she found the master list, payment records, port bribes, and letters proving Clarissa had ordered the poisoning tonic. The evidence was complete. Nathaniel stood before the burning wing, blood running from his temple. You have everything needed to clear your name. I should never have needed to clear it. I know. No, Nathaniel. Knowing now does not erase what you chose then. He looked at the servants, tenants, and crown officers gathered around them. I accused you publicly, he said. I will correct it publicly. Before Helena could answer, Sir Edmund arrived from London with an emergency order. The Crown had frozen the Beaumont Trust, but its collapse had triggered the debt clause Nathaniel had signed. Ravencourt's creditors would take possession in 7 days. Nathaniel unfolded the document. If the estate is seized, the tenants lose their homes. Helena examined the debt figures. The sum was enormous, but part of it had been created through fraudulent loans. Proving that would take months. They had 7 days. Thomas approached with a scorched account book recovered from the courtyard. Most pages were ruined, but one entry remained legible. Years earlier, Helena's marriage settlement had financed the restoration of Ravencourt's farms. The estate owed her nearly half its value. Nathaniel stared at the figure. You could claim Ravencourt before the creditors do. Helena closed the book. Yes, she said, but only if you surrender control of the estate to me. Nathaniel looked at the burning west wing, then at the tenants crowded beyond the courtyard. Ravencourt had belonged to his family for 9 generations. Surrendering it meant becoming a duke who no longer controlled the land attached to his name. Helena waited without persuading him. At last, Nathaniel removed the signet ring from his finger. Prepare the transfer. Sir Edmund summoned a crown solicitor. Before sunrise, Nathaniel signed an emergency deed, acknowledging that Helena's marriage settlement had financed the estate and granting her authority over its farms, accounts, and remaining assets. The creditors protested. Helena answered with Beaumont's master list, an evidence that the trust had manufactured Ravencourt's default. Faced with a royal fraud investigation, they suspended the seizure for 30 days. 30 days to save an estate whose fields were dying. Helena converted the ballroom into a laboratory. Thomas supervised soil testing while Mary organized the tenants into teams. The surviving seed packets were divided between 12 protected beds. Nathaniel offered the estate treasury. There is almost nothing left, Helena said after examining the accounts. You spent the reserves on your campaign. I will sell my London house, horses, and collection. That still may not cover the grain imports. Then I will sell everything not protected by the settlement. Helena looked at him. Do it because the tenants are owed security, not because you expect it to purchase my forgiveness. I understand. For the next 4 weeks, Nathaniel lived in 2 rooms of the undamaged East Wing. He dismissed no creditor, signed no order, and attended every meeting only when Helena requested him. His properties funded emergency flour shipments from Scotland and repairs to the river gate he had once refused to replace. Meanwhile, Helena stabilized the resistant wheat. The 12 seed beds produced less grain than Ravencourt needed, but enough to begin restoring the southern fields. She shared the formula freely with every affected estate, refusing the monopoly Clarissa had planned to create. Her decision destroyed the value of the stolen patents. Lord Beaumont's trust collapsed. Its remaining funds were seized to repay farmers and the families whose land had been infected. Port inspectors named the officials who had accepted bribes, while laboratory analysis proved that Clarissa's tonic had contained substances intended to prevent Helena from carrying another child. Yet one question remained unresolved. Nathaniel's authorization appeared on every contaminated shipment. He insisted he had signed blank import permits after Beaumont claimed speed was essential. Careless ambition explained his actions, but it did not absolve them. The final Crown hearing was held at Ravencourt 6 weeks after the fire. Commissioners, tenants, landowners, and newspaper reporters filled the rebuilt Great Hall. Clarissa entered under guard. Without her silk gowns and carefully arranged curls, she appeared colder rather than weaker. Voss followed in chains, and Lord Beaumont was brought in last. Nathaniel stood before them without his ducal insignia. Sir Edmund called Helena first. She placed her herbarium, the foreign beetle, Voss's ledger, the forged letters, the poisoning records, and Beaumont's acquisition list on the table. One by one, she explained the scheme. Voss imported insects carrying the fungus. His wagons delivered infected seed to estates already targeted for purchase. Clarissa gained access to Helena's correspondence and copied her handwriting. She stole the unfinished cure, staged the false demonstration, and planted evidence in Helena's chamber. Beaumont financed the operation, bribed officials, and used Nathaniel's ambition to move contaminated shipments without inspection. And why was the Duchess of Ravencourt targeted? Sir Edmund asked. Because her work could stop the blight, Helena replied, and because her husband had made it clear that her reputation could be sacrificed to preserve his. The Great Hall went silent. Sir Edmund turned to Nathaniel. Do you dispute that statement? No. Nathaniel faced the tenants who had witnessed Helena's arrest. I restored Voss's license after my wife revoked it. I gave Clarissa access to Helena's private work. I stole Helena's journals, claimed her discovery belonged to another woman, threatened to have her declared mentally unfit, and ordered her arrest when she warned me of the danger. Clarissa watched him with open hatred. Nathaniel continued. I did not create their conspiracy, but my vanity gave it authority. My resentment silenced the only person capable of stopping it. I accused my wife publicly, because believing her would have required me to surrender the power I wanted. He placed his signet ring on the commissioner's table. I relinquish every claim to control Helena's research, property, income, and residence. Ravencourt remains under her authority, whether she chooses to remain my wife or seek a legal separation. Helena had asked for public correction. Nathaniel gave it without requesting mercy. Sir Edmund read the preliminary judgments. Voss would stand trial for conspiracy, fraud, arson, and deliberate destruction of crops. Lord Beaumont faced the same charges, along with bribery and attempted murder. Clarissa would be tried for forgery, poisoning, fraud, and conspiracy. Then Sir Edmund turned toward Nathaniel. Your Grace, the Crown recognizes that you ultimately cooperated. However, your signatures enabled a national agricultural crime. Your cabinet appointment is revoked, your voting privileges in the Lords are suspended pending further inquiry, and you are required to surrender the profits gained through the Beaumont contracts. Nathaniel bowed. I accept. Sir Edmund looked toward Helena. The Crown restores sole authorship of the treatment to Duchess Helena Harrow and appoints her director of the new Royal Agricultural Institute. Applause rose from the tenants first, then spread through the hall. Clarissa suddenly laughed. Everyone turned toward her. You are celebrating too soon, she said. Voss did not bring only one strain of the blight into England. Helena felt her triumph sharpen into alarm. Clarissa looked directly at the healthy green wheat displayed beside the commissioners. The second strain does not attack ordinary crops, she said. It attacks Helena's resistant wheat. Before anyone could stop him, Voss broke from the officer beside him and hurled a glass vial toward the open seed tray. The vial struck the edge of the seed tray. Helena caught it before it shattered. She wrapped the glass in her handkerchief and held it toward the commissioners. Inside, black spores moved through a clear liquid. This is not a second blight, she said, after examining it beneath her microscope. It is the original fungus mixed with copper salts. My resistant wheat fails only when exposed to copper during germination. The detail appeared on page 117 of her journals, the page Clarissa had been unable to explain. Voss had designed the vial to make Helena's cure appear useless and preserve Beaumont's monopoly. Instead, it became the final evidence linking him to both strains. The officers dragged him back into chains. Clarissa's forged letters were compared with paper from her room. The watermark matched. Voss admitted importing the beetles and contaminated seed in exchange for a reduced sentence, while Beaumont's acquisition list proved the estates had been selected before the blight began. The judgments followed swiftly. Lord Beaumont received imprisonment and forfeited his fortune to the affected farmers. Voss lost his trading licenses and faced transportation after his sentence. Clarissa was convicted of poisoning, forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. She was stripped of every claim to Helena's research and imprisoned. Nathaniel's cabinet appointment and political privileges were permanently revoked. He sold his remaining personal property to compensate the tenants and publicly corrected Helena's authorship in Parliament, the Royal Society, and every newspaper that had printed his accusation. Helena retained Ravencourt, her research income, and complete control of the Royal Agricultural Institute. She also requested a formal separation. Nathaniel signed without protest. "I will not ask you to forgive me," he said. "I only hope to become someone who would have deserved your trust." "That decision belongs to you," Helena replied. "My future belongs to me." 1 year later, green wheat covered Ravencourt's fields. The restored glasshouse trained women in botany and provided disease-resistant seed without charge to poor farmers. Nathaniel lived on a modest neighboring property and worked under the estate council, possessing neither authority over Helena nor any promise that she would return. He repaired what he could because it was owed. On the morning of the first harvest, Helena stood before the glasshouse with Thomas, Mary, and the tenants. Above the door hung a new brass plaque, the Helena Harrow Agricultural Institute. Nathaniel watched from beyond the field as Helena placed the first bundle of healthy wheat into a farmer's hands. Once, he had declared that her work belonged to Ravencourt. Now Ravencourt belonged to her, and she chose to use it for everyone,